here, I like to take time, set it aside, and talk to you about the future. So how many of you have thought about what job you want to have in the future? Not you. What would you like to do in the future?
I want to be a lawyer.
A lawyer. What else do we have here? Yes, what would you like to be? A mom teacher, okay? What do you want to do, Jazzy? A police officer. Jack?
I want to be
a paramedic. Yes, Jonathan. A car dealer. Well, you can hook me up later. What would you like to be? A teacher. Lucas, one more. A football player. Would you play for the Lions? Okay, so future. So get your autographs from Lucas now. So you can put your hands down. So sometimes it's said that maybe we're too young to think about what it is we're going to do in the future. But I think a lot of you have already given it some idea of what you're going to do in the future. Now, your plans may change. Lucas, we'll have to see if you end up making it on the Lions or not. Your plans may change. When I was young, I wanted to be on the radio. I don't mean sitting on the radio. I mean, I wanted to be talking on the radio. Because when I grew up, this is going to be hard for you to hear. We didn't have a TV. No TV in our house, and it's not because I'm super old. It was a good decision my parents made that we had no TV. So I listened to a lot of radio. So I wanted to be a radio broadcaster, maybe a sports broadcaster. But when it came time to go to college, I thought, well, I don't know how to be a radio broadcaster, so I didn't decide to do that. Well, silly me, what do they do in college? They teach you how to do it. So I didn't become a radio broadcaster. It was between being a radio broadcaster or a third baseman on the Chicago White Sox. But they had a really nice guy who played third base at that time for the White Sox, and I didn't want to take his job. So I followed God's calling into teaching. I can't even really tell you why I became a teacher, but that's what I was going to do. Any of our teachers here, did any of you have a different job in mind than becoming a teacher? What were you going to do, Mr. Fashholtz? Be a football player? A race car driver. It's not too late.
I'm Mr. Volkert.
What were you always going to be teachers? A princess. One could say you've achieved that, Miss Sheridan. Okay, any other teachers? Yes, what did you want to be, Miss Harris? A doctor. So your plans may change, just like some of our teachers' plans change. But I believe that God set some people apart to serve in his church. What we call them is professional church workers. And it's not too young. Do you remember the story of Samuel? So Samuel in the Bible, his mom's name was Hannah. And Hannah so wanted to have a baby. So she prayed to God, if you would give me a child, if you could give me a baby boy, I am going to give him back to you to serve in the church. So that happened. God granted Hannah and her husband a baby. They named him Samuel. And when he was like 3 or 4 years old, so younger than you guys, his mom brought him to the temple and said, here, Eli, the high priest, Samuel is going to work for you and work for God. When Samuel was about 12 years old, do you remember the story of God calling him? I will read it to you. One night, Eli, the high priest, whose eyes were becoming so weak that he could barely see, was lying down in his usual place. The lamp of God had not yet gone out, and Samuel was lying down in the house of the Lord where the ark of God was. Then the Lord called Samuel. Samuel answered, "Here I am." And he ran to Eli and said, "Here I am, you called me." And Eli said, "I did not call you. Go back and lie down." So he went back and he lay down. Again, the Lord called Samuel. And Samuel got up and went to Eli and said, "Here I am, you called me." "My son," Eli said, "I did not call you. Go back and lie down." He probably wanted to add, "and quit waking me up." That's not in the Bible. Okay, now Samuel did not know the Lord. The word of the God had not yet been revealed to him. And a third time the Lord called Samuel. And Samuel got up and went to Eli and said, "Here I am, You called me. Then Eli realized that who was calling Samuel? God was calling the boy. And so Eli told Samuel, go and lie down. If he calls you, say, speak, Lord, for your servant is listening. So Samuel went and lay down in his place, and the Lord came and stood there, calling him at another time and said, Samuel, Samuel. And Samuel then said, speak, for your servant is listening. So we are not too young. Samuel was just a young boy when he went into the temple, and then 12 when he was called by God. Timothy, you remember Timothy from the Bible who traveled around with Paul? He was probably in his late teens when he was officially called by God to go into work. He was set apart to serve. So I don't think you are too young to consider, is God calling you? Is he setting you apart to serve? So I'm going to talk to the 8th graders specifically, but it's really for all of you. So 8th graders, do you think that 8 years is a long time? I see some yeses and nos. Miss Myers, do you think that 8 years is a long period of time? It is not. Mr. Keel, what do you think? 8 years goes by like that. 8th graders, what do you think? Give me a show of hands. How many people think 8 years is a long time? How many people think 8 years is not a long time? It's probably a long time to anyone who is 8 years and younger. That probably seems like a lifetime ago. See what I did there? So, but 8th graders, I'm going to use my timeline to show you that 8 years is not that long. Okay, so no one laugh at this. In 1980, I graduated from 8th grade. I was confirmed and I went to high school in 1980. In 1984, just 4 years later, I graduated from high school and I enrolled at Concordia College in Chicago. And just 4 years after that, I graduated from college and I was in a classroom. So just 8 years. So in 1980, I was seated where you are. 1988, I'm in a classroom and parents dropped their kids off at school and went, yeah, this is a good idea. I'll leave my kid with this guy. And just 8 years before, I was just a kid. So I think 8 years is no time in our eyes and God's eyes as well. So it's not too soon for you to think about that. Professional church work. What does that mean? What jobs are there in professional church work? I'm going to give you some of the highlights. There's more than this, but there's a pastor. I think we're familiar with what pastors are, right? We have several pastors here. They shepherd us and lead us. There's another position called Director of Christian Education. Have you ever heard of that before? Sometimes it's a DCE, Director of Christian Education. What these people do is they work alongside pastors in churches and help teach people from little kids all the way up to old people. There's another position, Director of Parish Music. The word parish is another name for church, and you know what music means, right? So the Director of Parish Music, what do you think they direct? Music. Very good, Mrs. Mueller. Very good. Good job. So that's what they do. You can get a full-time job just playing music to God's glory. A deaconess. These are women who work in the church alongside with the pastors and serving the congregation. And then, of course, the one that I'm most familiar with, and I think you each know one, point to a teacher. There, everyone's point to another teacher. And another teacher. So God has blessed us with so many teachers. But guess what? There is a shortage of teachers, not just in the country, but also in our Lutheran Church Missouri Synod. There's not as many teacher candidates as there used to be. So our church body, our Lutheran church body, recognizes this, and they have an initiative called Set Apart to Serve. And I have some items here that I'll give to your teachers that we might use in class that will talk about how some of us are set apart to serve to spread the gospel message of Jesus Christ. So am I looking at my parents here and back there? You can Google Set Apart to Serve, and you can go to a website that the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod has set up, and you can see all the positions. And you guys also can look at Set Apart to Serve and check it out online. So an obstacle sometimes to going to college is what? Money. Money can be a great obstacle. So our Concordia universities, there's several Concordia universities across the country. Sadly, the one that is closest to us is becoming much smaller and won't offer these programs, but maybe they will again in a few years. But there are other Concordia colleges and universities across the country, and they've recognized money could stand in the way of people going to college. So the school that I went to, Concordia University of Chicago, they recently announced, so parents and eighth graders, you want to pay attention to this, they recently announced that if you want to go and pursue one of these professional church work positions, it'll cost you $5,000. Now, do you think $5,000 is a lot of money? I hear some no's and yeses. Now, if you're looking at college, eighth graders, do you think $5,000 is a lot of money to go to college? It's not. Let me give you a comparison. You ready? University of Michigan. Maybe this is where Lucas is going to go play football someday. University of Michigan, if you are a resident of Michigan, it will cost you $17,000 in tuition to go. If you're from out of state from Illinois, it would cost you $58,000 to go to University of Michigan. How many Sparties are there in here? Okay, if you go to Michigan State, in-state, if you're a resident, it'll cost you $16,000 in tuition, $43,000 if you come from out of state. So now those numbers might be, they're like, that doesn't make any sense to me. So let's compare the $5,000 that you would pay to go to Concordia to pursue church work or the $17,000 in-state tuition in Michigan. So I looked online, Nintendo Switch, Xbox, about how much does this cost? About $300, $350. I went with $350. $300 would be a good deal. $350. So with the money you would save by going to Concordia, you would buy 35 game consoles. Now, if you were out of state, you would buy 151 game consoles. You could take 1,000 trips to Taco Bell for the money you'd save. Yeah. But wait, there's more. If you were out of state, you could go on 4,417 trips to Taco Bell with the money you would save. Now, if you think that that is good, I didn't know this until I was getting ready to talk today. There's a Concordia. Do we have anybody who went to Concordia St. Paul? I know we have a couple of teachers who did their masters through there. But Concordia St. Paul, Minnesota, guess how much it costs to pursue church work there? What do you think about $0? They do not charge tuition. This is how important our church body thinks that we need to have future church workers. They charge $0 for tuition. You pay for room and board. But it's not all about money. We won't want to go into professional church work just because we get a free education or a low-cost education. It's not so much about money, but that obstacle is taken away from us if money is a problem. Going to a Christian university, you get to continue living and serving and being in a place that's much like Trinity, where you're surrounded by fellow Christians. You can be involved in so many activities. And once you're graduated, you get to, we are instructed to tell people about Jesus. And there's nothing more important in this world than touching lives for eternity and telling people about Jesus. We get to share the gospel message that Jesus loved us so much, greater than we'll ever know, that he gave his life for us so that all of our sins would be wiped away and we'd be his saints and have a place in heaven. That is why our church body is removing obstacles so people like you maybe someday could be a church worker. And I look forward to coming and talking to some of you in the coming weeks about this. There's more than one way to become a professional church worker. You don't have to go to a Concordia. There's other methods. This is kind of the most direct way to do it, and I can talk to you about that. And if you are at home watching and you're a parent or someone, and you are thinking of what is God calling me to do, these opportunities are open for you as well. Jesus said in Matthew 9, when he saw the crowds, he had compassion on them. You could say he empathized, right? He had compassion on them because they were harassed and helpless, like sheep without a shepherd. Then he said to the disciples, the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few, meaning there's lots of people to talk to about Jesus. We don't have a lot of people to do it. Ask the Lord of the harvest, therefore, to send out workers. Point to yourself. Point to somebody next to you. Maybe that could be one of the workers to work in the harvest field. Maybe, like Samuel, God is calling you, and I pray that your answer might be, speak, for your servant is listening. Amen.